On June 21, 2025, the United States launched a major military strike against Iran, targeting its key nuclear facilities, Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. These sites are central to Iran's nuclear ambitions, and the attack marked a dramatic escalation in US-Iran tensions. The world watched as President Trump announced the operation, calling it a spectacular success and claiming the sites were obliterated. The stated goal to destroy Iran's uranium enrichment capability and prevent it from developing nuclear weapons. The attack came just 2 days after Trump's ultimatum to Iran, surprising many observers. This move aligned the US directly with Israel, which was already engaged in military exchanges with Iran. Iran had recently retaliated against Israeli strikes with a barrage of drones and missiles, most of which were intercepted. The US action signaled a new phase in the regional power struggle, raising fears of a wider conflict. President Trump, flanked by Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, projected unity and strength. Iran, meanwhile, condemned the attack as illegal and downplayed the damage, insisting its nuclear program would continue. Conflicting narratives emerged, leaving the world to sift through uncertainty and propaganda. The true impact, both physical and political, remained unclear in the immediate aftermath. The strikes raised urgent questions about the potential for a much larger war in the Middle East. The U.S. presented the operation as both necessary and effective, while Iran vowed resilience. International leaders and citizens braced for the consequences. The attack did not occur in isolation but as part of a broader, escalating conflict. The world's attention turned to the Middle East, uncertain what would come next. The U.S. had crossed a threshold, directly entering the fray between Iran and Israel. The region was now on edge with the risk of further escalation looming. The global community faced a moment of reckoning. The aftermath of the strikes would shape the future of international security. The Trump administration's justification was clear: prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. President Trump argued Iran was on the verge of this capability, posing an unacceptable threat to the U.S. and its allies. Officials insisted military action was the only option left after diplomacy failed. The strikes were also framed as solidarity with Israel, which faced direct attacks from Iran. The U.S. targeted Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan, critical to Iran's nuclear program, to cripple its ability to enrich uranium. The administration claimed this would set Iran's program back by years. The choice of targets demonstrated U.S. intelligence and military reach. The timing, just 48 hours after Trump's ultimatum, was meant to show resolve and unpredictability. Years of sanctions and negotiations had failed. Now, force was used to ensure regional security. The message: the U.S. would not allow Iran to alter the balance of power with a nuclear bomb. The operation was intended as a decisive blow, not the start of a prolonged war. The administration argued that only overwhelming force could halt Iran's nuclear ambitions. The world was left to judge whether this gamble would bring security or chaos. The stakes could not have been higher. The U.S. attack was a showcase of advanced military power. 6 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers spearheaded the assault, flying undetected into Iranian airspace. Their primary weapon, the GBU-57A/B massive ordnance penetrator, a 30,000-pound bunker buster designed for hardened targets. A dozen MOPs were dropped on Fordow, buried deep beneath a mountain. More hit Natanz. The message: no Iranian site was safe from U.S. reach. Simultaneously, U.S. Navy submarines launched 30 Tomahawk cruise missiles at Natanz and Isfahan. The multi-pronged attack overwhelmed Iranian defenses and struck with precision. Intelligence and logistics were meticulously coordinated for maximum effect. The operation demonstrated years of preparation and technological superiority. The U.S. aimed to cripple Iran's nuclear infrastructure in a single, devastating blow. The world took note of America's ability to strike anywhere, anytime. The attack's success sent a chilling warning to adversaries. Iran's response was swift and defiant. Leaders condemned the U.S. strikes as illegal aggression and vowed to continue their nuclear program. Iranian officials claimed they had evacuated key personnel, minimizing casualties. State media downplayed the damage, insisting Fordow suffered only minor harm. The government projected resilience, promising not to be intimidated. Hardliners called for retaliation, suggesting attacks on U.S. assets or closing the Strait of Hormuz. The region braced for a possible cycle of escalation. Behind the scenes, the U.S. used back channels to signal the strikes were limited, not the start of a wider war. Iran publicly refused talks under fire but hinted at openness if attacks ceased. The world saw a mix of threats and subtle diplomatic signals. The crisis deepened, but a diplomatic off-ramp remained possible. The next moves would determine whether war or negotiation prevailed. The June 2025 strikes were the climax of years of US-Iran hostility. Tensions spiked in 2018 when Trump withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal, reimposing harsh sanctions. The years since saw escalating incidents. The US killed Iranian commander Qasem Soleimani in 2020. Iran retaliated, and both sides clashed in the Gulf. Iran ramped up uranium enrichment, alarming the US and Israel. In June 2025, Trump demanded Iran's unconditional surrender, giving a 2-week ultimatum. Direct conflict between Iran and Israel created a tinderbox in the region. The US, as Israel's ally, was drawn in deeper. Striking just 2 days into the ultimatum, the US signaled diplomacy was over. Years of sanctions and threats had failed. Military force was now the chosen path. The attack marked the most dangerous chapter in decades of US-Iran animosity. The US attack sent shockwaves worldwide, dividing global opinion. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres warned of chaos and urged restraint. Israel praised the strikes, calling them historic and vital for its security. Iran's allies, including Hamas and the Houthis, condemned the US and threatened retaliation. Some Latin American countries denounced the attack as illegal aggression. Turkey offered to mediate, seeking a diplomatic solution. European nations, alarmed by the escalation, feared the end of diplomacy. Russia and China prepared to condemn the US at the UN. Gulf Arab states, though wary of Iran, feared being caught in a wider war. No radioactive leaks were detected, but anxiety ran high. The world braced for possible regional conflict. The attack exposed deep divisions among world powers. The risk of further escalation was palpable. The Iran strikes deepened political rifts in Washington. Republicans rallied behind President Trump, praising his decisive action. Democrats condemned the attack as unconstitutional, demanding congressional approval. Some called for impeachment, while a bipartisan group pushed for a war powers resolution. The debate reignited arguments over presidential versus congressional war powers. Critics warned of unchecked executive authority. Supporters cited the need to counter imminent threats. Trump and Vice President Vance, once critics of foreign wars, faced accusations of hypocrisy. The administration presented a united front, but anti-war supporters felt betrayed. Even within parties, opinions split. Some Democrats backed the strike. The political fallout underscored the complexity and unpredictability of U.S. foreign policy. The U.S. strikes raised the specter of a broader Middle East war. By attacking Iranian soil, the U.S. became a direct participant in the conflict. The risk of Iranian retaliation against U.S. bases, ships, or allies grew sharply. Iran could close the Strait of Hormuz, threatening global oil supplies and the world economy. Proxy groups like Hezbollah and the Houthis might open new fronts targeting U.S. and Israeli interests. The danger of miscalculation was high. A single incident could spiral into all-out war. The U.S. increased security at home and evacuated diplomats from Iraq and Israel. The region was on high alert, the balance of power shattered. The world watched, hoping for restraint but fearing escalation. The stakes included not just regional stability but global economic and security interests. The U.S. prepared for